So why is political messaging different from almost all other forms of communication? Well, there's one simple answer, and that is elections or re-elections. Politicians cannot do anything unless they are in office, and so they constantly have to think about what they're doing and what they're saying, how that's going to play with voters, and if it will hurt or increase their chances of re-election. Now, I want to compare two Canadian politicians and talk about how they have handled tough spots or challenges and see maybe what the differences in messaging and how that has worked out for both of them. So the two people that I want to compare, number one is Doug Ford, and you can see by a lot of the news articles that I'm going to pull up here, he's often quoted as changing his mind or being flexible, willing to listen to experts. So Doug Ford changes his mind on the autism funding plan. Doug Ford changes his mind about bigger class sizes. Doug Ford changes his mind about the Greenbelt. And there's really a trend here. You can just look up Doug Ford changes mind, and there's tons and tons of articles that will pull up on the search results. And in a sense, that's really interesting because Ford has really walked that tightrope between being able to change your mind versus being called a flip-flopper or walking back or taking back or some of these kind of terms. Changing mind has that semi-positive connotation where you're changing your mind. It doesn't necessarily have the negative about your flip-flopper or your walking back, but it can definitely be spun as a positive in the sense that you say, well, I'm willing to listen to experts. I come in with a preconceived notion, and so then experts or the public speaks to me, especially about the autism. That was very, very tough for Ontario members of provincial parliament. They took a huge beating on some of the original autism changes. And it doesn't even matter whether or not, by the way, the changes were good or bad. It's just simply we're just simply here talking about the messaging and the response from the public and what Ford was able to project as an image afterwards. So changing your mind seems to be working well here. This is a negative changing your mind from Reddit, but changing your mind seems to be the thing that Doug Ford has got going for him, and he somehow avoided being labeled as a flip-flopper. When you compare that to our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, he seems to be more the stonewalling type. And there's pros and cons to both, but let's go through some of the stories here, just refresh our memories. This one is a doozy. I will see if we can get that linked in the comments for you because it was great. The opposition asked 18 times if the Prime Minister had spoken to the Ethics Commissioner, and all 18 times he gave the exact same answer. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. It was a pretty ridiculous exchange in the House, but definitely something you should watch, especially if you're an avid political person like I am. Then there was this one, they're just kind of leaving it without a budget. They're not really paying attention. I guess, sideshow issues are really taking the center stage. And so, who needs a budget? We're just kind of going to ignore that one. Then there's this one, which my colleague Leo Knight spoke about. This is regards to the WE scandal in the committees and how they're really just trying to filibuster, waste time, and just delay and obfuscate. And so these are really the two sort of strategies you can take. I mean, there's more, but these are the two main strategies that people can take. It's either changing your mind or really holding firm, and they have some pros and cons. We already spoke about the potential downside of being labeled a flip-flopper if you change your mind. What's the downside about stonewalling? Well, stonewalling, you try to control the amount of information out there, and so there's a certain amount of ammunition which you already exists, which can be shot at you, but you are basically trying to close that down, and you're not trying to give the opposition or any critic, you're not trying to give them any more information. And I think that is really what the Conservatives are picking up on right here, saying that there must be something to hide if the Liberal government is working very hard to bury everything in the WE scandal. There's got to be something there. But the stonewalling actually really seems to be working. I don't know, to be honest, how far this is penetrating, how far this news is penetrating to the average Canadian, because there's just simply so much going on. We are very distracted by what's going on in the United States. We're very distracted by, obviously, the coronavirus, which is constantly hanging over our heads. And so the two different types of political messaging are here for us to see. Now, I think the final thing that is important to keep in mind when thinking about political messaging, again, is the re-election. Now, when we're talking about Ford, so Ford seems to be a guy who's changing his mind. And he can definitely use that when we're talking about re-electing Ford, saying, listen, I'm coming in with a certain amount of perspectives. They might be conservative perspectives, but I'm willing to listen to experts. And I think this is sort of where he is getting into some trouble with the renewal to stage 2 in a modified stage 2 in some areas in Ontario, where it seems to be that Ford is listening to the experts, and the experts are telling him, well, we've got to do something because the cases are going up again. And so this is maybe the downside of Ford changing his mind or being willing to listen to experts or other people, but it's definitely, there's got some room to play with for a re-election campaign, or for trying to position yourself as a leader, a real responsible leader, someone who listens to experts, listens to the people. And that, I think, fits with Doug Ford's overall brand. He was for the people. That's his big thing, being for the people. And so it would be very difficult on one hand if he did not take this tack, because unless you're going to start saying, well, I know what's better, and I know what the people want, I know what they need, then they start complaining and showing that clearly that's not what they want or what they need, and pull the rug out from under you. So this is, on one hand, based on Ford's positioning, his messaging, this is really the main route which he can go, which makes the most sense. Trudeau, on the other hand, stonewalling and simply not allowing any information, he might be relying on the fact that the Conservatives have a new leader, Aaron O'Toole, who is less known, less popular than he is. They might be relying on the fact that the government is giving out tons of money for the COVID response, and so maybe they're just going to hope that the Conservatives will say something that they can frame negatively and say, well, you've got to stick with us because we are going to ensure that you are getting food on your table, and that's kind of the way. So these are the two different perspectives. They seem to be more a natural fit for each person. But what do you guys think? Simply on a communications perspective, what do you guys think if you were a Justin Trudeau advisor or Doug Ford advisor? And I know you might not even relish that thought, being able to put yourself in those shoes. But again, simply from a messaging or communications perspective, what do you guys think? What is working? What is not working? And where do you guys think these things will go? So hopefully you guys will think a bit differently about political messaging. Remember, elections are always overhanging them. And again, I am Sam Eskenasi for True North. Thank you so much for watching, and have yourselves a great day.